Jeffrey Baldinger, ladies and gentlemen. Did I say it properly?
You said it perfectly, yes.
Okay.
Jeffrey Baldinger, Tom Rhodes. Good to be here.
It's so good to have you, man. And we've been talking about doing this for a while.
Yep.
Because we have a mutual love of Rodney Dangerfield.
Rodney Dangerfield, the best.
So let's kick it off with our Rodney talk.
Yeah.
You wrote, and I find this really interesting.
Yeah.
Was it your college thesis?
Yeah. So I wrote a college paper about the comparison and contrast of Jewish humor with Rodney Dangerfield and Larry David as kind of the dichotomy of what it can be and what it has been and stuff like that. So
the pinnacles of Jewish humor and the opposites of what that can entail.
Right, exactly. Like the schlemiel and the schlemazel.
Haas and Pfaff Incorporated.
Yep, exactly. Essentially, Rodney put it all on himself. Took everything as like, nothing goes right. I'm doing all right now, but last week I was in rough shape, and I don't get no respect, and everything is a put on against him. Whereas like Larry creates and obviously it's different in terms of stand-up versus sketch and show and stuff like that, but Larry creates situations in which he is the asshole. Creates situations where it's like he is the guy that everybody has a problem with, and it's on him. And even though he's like, what I do is what's wrong? Whenever he's right or wrong, it's always like everybody else has the problem. Whereas Rodney's like, everything's going wrong for me. It's sort of like puts himself in the position of the schlemiel versus. It's like the.
I like the way you had explained it to me when you first were telling me about it. That Rodney Dangerfield is a guy that everything bad is happening to him.
Right.
The world is just chaos for him, where Larry David is inflicting trouble on the world.
Exactly.
And he's the one
it's the
causing the trouble.
It's you either have the soup fall on, like spills on you, or you're the guy spilling the soup, sort of thing. That's the kind of difference. The schlemiel and schlemazel is that kind of dichotomy. It's like, did you get the soup spilled on you, which is Rodney, everything's happening to him, or did you spill the soup, which is Larry, just like, he's inflicting the pain.
Somebody had told me this yesterday, which is a different example of, I guess, the same theory, that there's two types of people in the world. Those who feel pressure, and then those who apply pressure.
Yeah.
So.
I mean that's.
So I guess in comedic terms, with Larry David and Rodney Dangerfield, it would be. One is an asshole, and one is
feeling the asshole.
Feeling the asshole-ishness.
It's obvious. Like Larry definitely puts on the pressure. Is the okay, yeah. Let me ask you a question here. Like he feels entitled to the knowledge, whereas Rodney's just like, hey, it's like I was so ugly the doctor slapped my mother. That's the sort of his vibe, his sort of like, it's all, the heaviness is what he used to say.
One of my favorite Rodney Dangerfield jokes is, I was never breastfed as a child. My mother told me she just wanted to be friends.
It's so brilliant. One of my favorite ones that it got me kind of hooked on Rodney in general was and it was the darkness of this joke, which was just, what true trust is? Two cannibals giving each other oral sex,
Great joke.
Just brilliant.
So when I was 15, I'd say, because I wanted to be a comedian since I was 11. So yeah. I'd say from the ages of 14 to 16, Rodney Dangerfield was my god.
Yeah.
And I had the cassettes of his albums, and I had memorized every joke. And one of my favorite jokes, and so simple. I was robbed in the subway the other day. A guy pulled a razor on me. It was my own fault because I was standing too close to an outlet. And that's such a conceptual joke.
Yeah.
He was robbed by the guy was holding
an electric
razor. And then you would have to accept the concept that there would be an electrical outlet.
Right, on the subway. And him just standing there. It's just like that sort of cerebral stuff is just so brilliant. It's the same thing where like some of the first Rodney jokes because I loved Rodney from an early age. I just was obsessed with comedy in general. Like I would watch him on Carson, like the old Carson tapes. Like I'm not old enough to like have seen it live like him on Carson, but my parents would play old tapes and stuff like that, and I would watch them. And just the back and forth between him and Johnny, whereas like he would ask Johnny like, "How long you and Ed been together?" And Johnny was like, "Oh, we've been 25 years, about 25 years." And Rodney would go, "No kids?" And it's one of those things. And then Johnny hits back with, "Well, it's not like we haven't tried." It's like that sort of just boom, boom, boom. Like that sort
They
of stuff,
worked together
just
so beautifully.
which is so fascinating, knowing like seeing that relationship unfold in such a beautiful way. But then reading Rodney's book, which is one of my favorite books, the Rodney Danger autobiography, where it's a life of sex, drugs, and no respect. It's not easy being me. A life of sex, drugs, and no respect. Brilliant book, one of my favorites. But apparently, like they didn't like each other for the longest time because Rodney accused one of Johnny's writers of stealing one of his jokes. And so Johnny had like blackballed him from the Tonight Show for years and years and years.
Wow.
And then Johnny came to Dangerfield's club one day, and Rodney like rolled out the red carpet for him, treated him really nicely, treated him with a lot of respect. And then like a week later, Johnny had him on the show, and it was just like kind of like a sorry for the misunderstanding, sort of whatever happened. But I never intended to blame Johnny. It was like maybe somebody that worked for you or whatever it was, but it was like there's no animosity between us. And then after that, went on to have like this huge, amazing, successful Tonight Show repartee.
The best relationship.
Yeah, it was incredible.
I used to take the TV Guide, and because I became a student of comedy from 11 years old onward, and I my family got the TV Guide, and I would look through it, and then I would circle or highlight when there would be a comedian on all the Merv Griffin show, Mike Douglas in the afternoon, and then Carson at night, and then I would be and I mean just I just remember titillating with excitement when Rodney was coming on. I don't know if I ever told you this story. When I saw Rodney Dangerfield when I was 15 years old.
Okay.
I'm sure I told you this story. So it was at the Orlando Tupperware Theater, and he was drunk. The show was actually, it was pretty terrible. And I went with my buddy from high school, John Forrester. Shout out to John.
Shout out Johnny F.
He was a year older than me. He had a driver's license. I didn't even have a driver's license at the time. And so we go, and he was also a huge Rodney Dangerfield fan, and we both had memorized all of his jokes. We knew him by heart. We were, throwing them around all the time. And he's screwing up his jokes. He was really drunk. And then the show ended, and there was no security at this place. And it was like a high school stage with like the steps on either side of the stage. And we wanted to meet Rodney, so we sneak up the side of the stage and dart back behind the curtain, and it's all dark back there, and there's a light in the distance, and we go, and it's Dangerfield's dressing room, and he's sitting there in his boxer underwear, and his pants were over a chair. And I learned later through telling this story to comedians for years that that's an old Catskill comedian trick, that they would take their pants off when they got off
stage.
Keep
the creases.
To preserve the dry cleaning crease.
Yeah. There's a
but I didn't know. I'm 15. I didn't know. I'm like, oh my God, here's my hero. And he's
pantsless.
He just did a terrible show, and now he's in his underwear, and he's slumped over in front of a Miller Lite. And,
oh my God.
We're like, Rodney, you're the greatest. And I got him to sign a piece of paper, but it wasn't even worth saving because it was just like a wave of a line. He was so drunk. And then I guess it was his tour manager or something comes back and he says, hey, what are you kids doing here? And we love Rodney. And he says, listen, you can meet Rodney in about 20, 30 minutes. You got to wait outside this door and he'll be coming out. So the guy, it's the backstage door to the theater, big steel door. And there's a waiting Lincoln Town car waiting for him. And like a half hour later, the door opens and Rodney appears even more drunk than he was when he was on stage.
Do you remember how old he was at that time? Like,
No, whatever.
Where
I
he
mean,
was? Was it pre-brain surgery, post-brain surgery?
Oh,
like,
I didn't know he had brain surgery.
Yeah. He had because he had. I remember just, and this is just all in his book. But when I was doing, the heavy research on him and stuff like that, he had brain surgery and heart surgery within like the same month.
Oh, wow.
And it was just like he was just going through the ringer, and then he was, obviously smoking pot every single day and just drink and like
Huge pot smoker.
huge pot smoker. And there's just this story of him hanging out like right after brain surgery. He was hanging out, I think, at the Comedy Store. And Saget walks up to him, and he's waiting to, Ron Jeremy's wanting to hang out with him, and so he's there waiting for Ron Jeremy, and Bob Saget walks up to him, and he goes, "Rodney, you just got out of brain, like you were just in the hospital. How are you doing?" He's like, "How am I doing? I just had brain surgery and heart surgery, and I'm waiting for a guy who can suck his own dick. How you doing?" It's just like, even after that, he's just like, God, right? Just like
Still sharp.
Quick to the punch. But like, there were times when he would just like, I think probably before the brain surgery, because like after that, I think he got tighter with like not doing alcohol, not drinking and stuff like that. But
Well, he was so drunk. The backstage door opens up, and there's 3 cement steps down to the waiting Lincoln Town car, and Rodney goes, "Hey kids, help me," and he puts one arm around John Forrester, and he puts another arm around me, and I'll never forget carrying this old man's torso down these 3 steps, and then we gently placed him in the back of this waiting Lincoln Town car as if he were the Christ child.
Oh my God.
We just worshipped this man.
Yeah.
And then the door closed, and then he drove off, and I was convinced I wanted to be a stand-up comedian.
So that
from this moment, because like, here's this old man,
right,
an elderly senior citizen who like a 15 and 16-year-old boys worshipped.
Right. That you just helped into his so like, I just want to,
I had no problem with the fact that the show wasn't good because he was drunk.
Right.
I was just like, just to be in the same room with him, breathing the same momolecules as as this comedy god.
Yeah.
So
that's incredible, because like it's so great that it didn't disillusion you. Like this was this person that you had on this pedestal.
Yeah, it didn't make me like him less.
And then you see him drunk, do a bad show, and then you literally have to carry him into like he in the most amazing way possible. Like, he humanized himself so much to you that like there's literally nothing that you could put him on a pedestal for after this night. Like, literally, it's like carrying your own grandpa down. Like, it's like, grandpa's drunk again, gotta put him in the car, whatever it is.
It seemed like he was Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
It just seemed like, oh my God, well, he's, that's what rock stars do. They get wasted. Sometimes they do shitty shows.
That's amazing. Because like, there's so many people that I feel like would have that experience of just like, oh man, it's not what I thought it was. It's not who I thought he'd be. I thought he was going to be, joke, and just like, he's just whatever.
I wasn't disappointed in the least. And
that's amazing.
And even I bought a concert shirt.
Oh my God.
And I was 15 years old, and I remember I wore this to school so many days.
Yeah.
Like, probably, I'd wear this like twice a week at least. I loved Rodney Dangerfield. And I thought this shirt was lost forever. And when my father died and I was looking through his stuff, I found this shirt.
That's such a great shirt.
My dad had saved it, and it's a size medium. And I lost 40 pounds. I used to be a size large, and now I'm a medium.
You can fit into it again.
Well, I try to. It's like super tight.
Yeah.
But it's. But I'm. This is one of my most prized possessions.
That's amazing.
And I. And again, I'm still. Had it been a great show, and I never got to meet him,
right?
The story wouldn't be as powerful
personal,
as this.
Probably.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, had it been a great show, it would have been. Probably a deification of Rodney, in the sense like and he put on an amazing show, and it was just such a moving moment, blah, blah, blah. But now it's like you got to interact with your hero. You got
Yeah.
to interact with this person that meant the world to you, and you got to see him in a human light and just like, this is what I want. Which is funny because it's like, that's what you want. You want to be carried out drunk by, teenage fans.
Teenagers
It's
who
like, what
worship
is
you.
that what you want? But it's like, when you think about it, it's like Rodney was such a brilliant joke writer, and he was so quick and so the thing that I loved about Rodney is everything he did was funny. Like his voice, his clothing, his words, his mannerisms, everything. He used everything about him to be funny.
Everything. I mean,
And so it's like
the tie is too tight.
Yeah.
He's
And
he's
the
always jerking at the tie.
getting comfortable and just like how he says his jokes, the mannerisms, he uses everything, whether intentional or not. Like it's very an intentional thing where it's like use everything, not just the words that you say. They should be funny, but like how you say the funny words can make them even funnier, and like how you dress to like put this like he was himself, but he was also a character. Like he was this like oh god, he was that guy. It wasn't just a character, but it was like amplified. He turned it to 11. Is like that's just
Well, I remember, from talking to you, because I didn't know he had written a book,
yeah,
and I ordered that book after you had told me about it, and I read it. I believe I got this piece of information from that book. I'm almost 100%. When the original Godfather came
yeah,
out,
yep.
he said everyone in New York
It's all about
thought
respect.
it was all about respect. Everyone wanted to be Italian after The Godfather came out, and everything was respect and respect to you, and you people giving respect
Yep.
in the Italian Godfather kind of way. And he thought, what's the opposite of that? Is I'm gonna be the guy
Who doesn't
who
get any
gets
respect.
no
No
respect
respect.
whatsoever.
And it was
what a
so
genius comedic concept
Yeah.
that the movie The Godfather gave him that brainchild.
Exactly. And that's what really transformed his career. It was that sort of it went from with me nothing goes right, because that was kind of always what he kind of started out with, like I'm doing all right now, but last week I was in rough shape. Like that was like, if you listen to his first few albums, like that's what it starts after The Godfather, and he starts going like I don't get no respect at all. It's like that hit the nerve of the nation, going like
Yeah.
no, we don't get respect either, Rodney.
Yeah.
We like it's just like no, nobody respects us either. It's like it captured everybody's plight of like, yeah, everybody feels like they don't. Even the people that get respect feel like they don't get enough respect. It's like,
Yeah.
and he just captured that momentum, and it was because of The Godfather, which is so fascinating. And just on how on the pulse he was too, because he was like, and from the book, he was a little bitter about the fact that like he didn't make it as a kid. He didn't hang out with his contemporaries age wise, like, but when he came back, because he had to quit when he was 20 or so, and then he sold aluminum siding for about 20 years. Came back when he was 40, and then he just made a point to like bring up young comedians like Jim Carrey, Roseanne, Sam Kinison, Bill Hicks. All these guys did the young comedian special, the Rodney Dangerfield young comedian specials, and it's like he just had the pulse on the youth of what was hip and happening at the time. It was like he was such a brilliant guy.
Yeah. And he, partied with Kinnison and
Yeah.
all these, so I mean, he was kind of Led Zeppelin of the comedy world.
And what's funny though,
And funnier than Kinnison
yeah,
would ever be.
yeah, and that not funnier than Kinnison ever could have been, because Kinnison had allowed the demons to get him and just
And
felt.
I loved Kinnison when he
Yeah.
first came out. I thought, oh, this guy's really ferocious.
Yeah, Rodney actually advised Kinnison not to host SNL because they would make kind of handcuff him and stuff like that, and that's what happened. Really, he wasn't able to show his
Be the full
Kinnison and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was kind of rough.
When I was 20 years old, I moved to New York City, and I wasn't ready yet as a comedian, and I could only afford to live in Washington Heights.
Yeah,
And one of the worst years of my life. I was really struggling and I had no money. I'm completely broke. But the one place I got to do sets was at Dangerfield's.
Dangerfields. Yeah.
And it meant the world to me. And I never saw him there. I got to see him twice and shake his hand again. I don't know if I shook his hand when I was 15, but
Well, you had him on your shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, I held his torso.
You held him.
At the Laugh Factory in L.A. In the 90s. And you know, he was a little standoffish, and he wasn't too friendly.
Okay.
And I didn't go, hey man, you know, I carried you when you were drunk and you did a terrible show. I was very respectful.
That would have endeared you
but you
to
know,
him.
I was really young and skinny, and I had the long hair.
Yeah.
Back then, so I mean, you know, who knows what his
right
perception of
who knows what he was going through.
Who knows
at the
what
time.
he was going through? And you know, that's what Bob Dylan said in that book that he wrote was. Be nice to everybody because you don't know what anyone's dealing with
exactly
at any time. So, but I was very respectful. I'm, Mr. Dangerfield. I'm Tom Rhodes, and I love you very much. And and he shook my hand, and he was probably sitting there going through his set through his head.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. Because
I do that too. Like, it happened to me Saturday night. There was this comedian guy. He'd been doing comedy for 4 months.
Yeah.
And I'm about to go on and do an hour set, and I'm trying to think of.
And he's talking to you. He's like,
and,
hey, man,
I'm used to doing 15-minute sets in L.A.
Right.
And I'm trying to think of, and I'm just like, hey, brother, man, that's awesome, brother.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hey, I'm gonna go over my set real quick. Not to be rude, and just blah blah blah. Yeah, like it's.
Yeah, maybe Rodney was trying to remember, his new bits.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, there's so much that he could like. I heard this story once that he had dropped in at the Improv in L.A. And there was like a new manager there at the time or whatever that didn't know.
How can you not know
who he was? Like he was like that exactly.
As the manager of the Improv, if you don't know who Rodney
exactly. I don't think he kept the manager job too quick, too long after this particular story. But Rodney came in, and the manager's like, "Hi." Rodney's like, I just want to go up for a little bit, and the manager's like, it's a booked show. It's so and so's headlining, and there's no room to. I don't know. Sorry. And and like Rodney was like turned. He wouldn't let Rodney on.
Oh,
and then
my God.
So Rodney was like, all right, I guess okay. He's kind of hung out for a little bit, but then it was about to leave, and manager goes over and tells the comic whose show it was and the general manager Rita what just transpired, and they both were like, are you fucking nuts? What the fuck is wrong with you? They run to try to. He was like, Rodney, no, you can go up, you can go. I was like, no, that's okay. I'm about to head out, but I love you both, blah, blah, blah. Have a good show, blah, blah. He leaves. The manager's like, wait, what? What's going on? It's like, when Rodney Dangerfield, it's like that Ghostbusters, when somebody tells you if you're a god, you say yes. If Rodney Dangerfield comes in, says, I want to go up, you put him up. God damn it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you grew up in Minnesota?
So yeah, I grew up in Minnesota, and I mean, how
did you discover comedy, and how did you fall in love with Rodney Dangerfield?
Well, so I've been in love with comedy my whole life. I would watch, Mel Brooks, Saturday Night Live, SCTV, Kids in the Hall, Mad TV. Like, I was a student of just comedy in all of its forms. And I loved it. My mom and dad I found this out recently. My mom and dad have never missed an episode of Saturday Night Live since 1975. Wow. That's like one of their traditions. Like they watch it every single week. And so like they have an appreciation for comedy that allowed me to, really absorb it. They had old tapes of SNL, old tapes of, Johnny Carson, old tapes, Mr. Bill,
I loved Mr. Bill.
Yeah, and
I used to have a Mr. Bill t-shirt too.
Really? Oh yeah. I love Mr. Bill.
Mr. Bill.
And when I was in like the 4th grade, I had this idea of doing a talk show where the desk was like so high that you had to climb a ladder to get onto it, and the guest was like low. And I told my mom about that, and she's like, "You came up with that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I thought it'd be funny because the host's always higher than the guest." And then she showed me the Andy Kaufman special, which that exact thing, like he has that huge high desk, and I was like, "Holy shit, who is this guy?" And I got into Andy Kaufman that way, and I was like, "Oh my god, comedy can be literally anything." And then
Your mother thought, I have a comedic genius for a son.
no, just somebody who is derivative of a comedic genius. You're being derivative. You gotta be original. But then, like, through that, just like found Rodney tapes, found Rodney Dangerfield jokes, and then obviously in The Simpsons, Rodney voiced Larry Burns, Mr. Burns' illegitimate son, and there was a whole episode of Rodney Dangerfield on The Simpsons. It was just like so funny. And I was like, who is this guy? Who is Rodney? And then I just started absorbing everything that I could of Rodney Dangerfield. Then when I got into college, I got his book. I wrote that paper, and I just got this wealth of knowledge on Rodney, and just like he is the reason that I got on stage for the first time. Just like the way, like his book just made me want to be on stage and be a part of comedy in general. It was just like, this is just what it is. This is, if you like, there's a line in his book that just is simple, but it's like, if you want to be in comedy, be around comedy. And it was like, yeah, I just go to the comedy clubs, be a part of that, be a part of the community, be a part of that sort of stuff. And I got all of his albums, I got all of his tapes, all of his specials, everything. My favorite intro that he ever gave was for Bill Hicks. He's like, this next guy coming to the stage, he's so ahead of his own time, his parents haven't even met yet. Give it up for Bill Hicks, and just his style, his comedic voice, and his ability to just really see the potential and give opportunities to people was so inspiring. Like the way he helped Jim Carrey out, the way he helped Roseanne out. It was just like,
how did he help them out?
So he, when Jim Carrey stopped doing like impressions, stopped trying to be Rich Little essentially, and he was just doing straight stand up, he was bombing all the time. But Rodney loved him so much. He thought he was so weird, so wacky, that he just kept bringing him on the road and just allowed him to open for all of his shows, and just allowed him to have his voice grow and grow, so that he was like, and people would, and this is all in his book too, where people would always like say it around, like, you got to get rid of this kid. He's ruining your shows, man. And Rodney would just be like, "No, man, that kid's doing his thing. He'll figure it out eventually." And he just saw that potential.
Stuck with him.
He just stuck with him. It allowed him to grow. And then the same thing with Roseanne. Nobody was giving Roseanne a shot, outside of doing spots at the Comedy Store. And Rodney made her his wife in the Young Comedian special. Let her act, let her be her full power Roseanne in those specials, and then let her close out the special and had like one of the best sets of the night, and just like really platformed her in a way
that was the performance that made her a star.
Yeah,
like Kinnison's performance
right.
on Rodney. And the Tropicana, they're about to tear it down.
Yeah,
the Laugh Factory that's there now, that was the original Dangerfields, where they had filmed those young comedian specials.
Yeah, I did that a few months ago. I got to sit in Rodney's chair where he had he signed the name and stuff like that. Yeah. Love that.
And I'll tell you two stories. When I was 19 years old, I won the funniest person in Central Florida contest.
Okay.
And the grand prize was I got a plane ticket and I got to fly to Los Angeles, and I got to do a set at the world famous Comedy Store. And it was a Monday potluck, you know, 3-5-minute set, whatever it was. But it was really a big deal.
It's huge. It's a huge deal.
And I won this contest. And the contest was in conjunction with the premiere of Rodney Dangerfield's Back to School movie.
Wow.
So they had the contest locally in Orlando, and then the finals was at the movie theater like on the ground beneath the big screen, me and like the 5 other comedians, and like I think we all did like 5 minute
Yeah.
sets or whatever. And then I won the contest. So
It's amazing.
and it was all a part of the promotion of
Right.
the Rodney Dangerfield movie.
That's so great. And
So
and you know what's it's crazy? It's cool that Rodney did once he got back into movies, back to school, and then Ladybugs, and Caddyshack, and all those films. Is he had it as, like, he owns all of his characters. That was something that was very important to him as like a standard. Like, he needed to own the rights to his characters. So I think his estate now, especially, but like they own all the rights to his characters, which is why they had to change the character for Caddyshack 2. The character like Jackie Mason played was like similar, but it couldn't be the same character because it
Right.
was like because Rodney owned that character.
wow. Okay, so here's another story that I don't think I've told this story very often. So before I started doing, I started doing, I did stuff in high school, and it really wasn't until I was in 11th and 12th grade that I did the talent shows and
Right.
hosted pep rallies and stuff like that. So I would say I was probably 15, 16 years old. Because I started being a stand-up when I was 17. I started going to open mic nights in Orlando. So I'm saying I'm probably about 15 years old, around the same time that I saw Dangerfield.
Yeah.
My father, everyone knew I wanted to be a comedian.
Okay.
And my father had met some guy my father was an insurance salesman. And he met some guy who was a watchmaker. And my dad told the guy that I guess the guy said he loved comedy or whatever, and he said my son wants to be a comedian, and the guy hired me to come and do comedy at his watchmaker group meeting,
Yeah.
which was on International Drive at the Quality Inn hotel, which is like this, at the time it was the tallest hotel on International Drive, and it's like some round shaped building, cylinder building.
Right.
And I didn't have any jokes of my own. I was 15 years old, and I knew every Rodney Dangerfield
Yeah.
joke. So the guy paid me like $50,
Yeah.
which, I'm 15.
Yeah.
That was a fortune.
Yeah.
And I remember I brought a group of my buddies, John Forrester, and I think Mark Williams, and 3 or 4 other guys, Scott Gasly, whatever happened to that guy?
I'm not sure.
There was my little,
Your
group,
crew.
my little group
yeah.
of buddies came to support me. They all
Yeah.
drove with me, and it was in a little conference room of, I'd say, probably 20
Yeah.
older guys who were watchmakers, and
It's all about
the
timing.
guy who hired me said, I have a little entertainment, and I've brought this young guy to do some stand-up comedy for you. And I did, like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes of Rodney Dangerfield jokes. And, here's these older men looking at me, and I'm like, my wife, she's so big. When she sits around the house, she sits around the house.
Scale says one at a time,
And
you
like,
know?
these guys are looking at me like, you're 15. You don't have a wife. What are you talking about, kid? And I'm like, my doctor, Dr. Vinegar
Butts.
Butts.
Yeah.
You
What
know?
a doctor I got,
All I knew. But I mean, like, my, that was my.
I asked my dentist what I should do about my yellow teeth. He said wear a brown necktie.
What a great
you know?
line.
Oh, come
my
on.
God. I forget what a great classic. So, I think my first paid comedy performance was doing 10 minutes of Rodney Dangerfield's jokes to
That's so funny.
some Orlando watchmakers.
That's so funny. It's
I haven't even like thought of that in years.
when I first became a comedian, when I first started doing stand up, I would visit back home, and it's a similar situation where when you say like, "Oh yeah, I'm a comedian now," and you're my parents' friends, and like it'd be at like this party or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, tell us some jokes.
Yeah.
And I didn't have like jokes, I didn't have like. So whenever somebody would ask me to tell them a joke, I just spout out a bunch of Rodney stuff because it was like just one-liners, you know. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, I saw what was the joke? I used to tell this joke all the time as my go-to, like tell me a joke, and it would just be like the Rodney joke of. Found a wallet with my kid's pictures inside, where he's like the stranger's wallet, but it was his kid's
Yeah, yeah,
pictures,
yeah.
indicating that the kids weren't his kids. You know, it's like I forget exactly how the joke goes now, but it was just like it made me laugh so hard back then. I was like, that's you know, and I was young enough to be like, "Oh, that's weird. That's you don't have any life experience about that joke," but it's like that's what it was, or you know, my wife's a horrible cook. You know, she made me chocolate mousse. I choked on the antlers. You know, it's that one. And then my dog taught me how to beg. You know, like that sort of stuff. And then my doctor said we should have. My doctor, our therapist, my wife and I's therapist said that we should have more sex. I said if we do that, we'll never see each other. Just like all these quick one-liner jokes that are just
Such
like
great jokes.
amazing.
I never saw any video of this, but someone told me once the most cutting comeback line ever. Rodney Dangerfield said to a woman, "Lady, anyone who would fuck you is too lazy to jack off." Ouch.
Oh my
Ouch.
God, that's amazing. I love the Norm Macdonald stories about him and Rodney. He's told them on like Letterman and stuff like that. But one of my favorites is when he talks about Rodney hosting SNL, and he's just like on the Weekend Update. It's during rehearsal, and Rodney's like, "What are we doing rehearsing for? I know my jokes. Why do we got to do this?" And Norm's just like, I don't know, Rodney. I mean, this is just it's TV. It's what it is. And Rodney's like, I tell you, Normie, TV, acting, movies is all bullshit. Stand up. Stand up's the only thing. And Norm's like, yeah, okay, all right. And he's quiet for a little bit. And then Rodney just goes, I tell you, stand up's bullshit too, you know? Just like completely takes it out. But say again?
He just threw it out.
Yeah, just threw it out there. I mean, it's just like Rodney was so like whenever I'm in like a rut, I don't know if this is true for you too, but whenever I'm in like a writer's block kind of rut or whatever, my go-to to get out of it is just trying to write kind of Rodney style jokes. Just like do quick one-liners, just like get in the habit of just like writing quickest to the punch, just like really fast jokes, just like get it out there so that I can just get back into the rhythm of jokes. And it's so helpful to just like look at it in like least amount of words to a great punchline. How can I get there? And that's just like what Rodney was.
Yeah, and I've always loved one-liners, and I do a lot of kind of short one-liner jokes.
Yeah.
And I definitely get that from Rodney Dangerfield being my favorite comedian
Right.
when I was younger. But now the style is more conversational.
Right.
And I'm always trying to break out of that habit. And my ex-wife and always best friend Ashna is always reminding me to write longer form jokes and stuff, because my instinct is always for the economy of words. Short setup, dagger punch.
Right. But I think there's a world in which you can have both. You know, it's like you can have the conversational style, but within that conversation, have the quick punches throughout the story as well. You know what I mean? If you're telling the stories, like each thing can have those sort of quick punches to honor the style that you fell in love with and why you got into it in the first place, and then also be more personal, be more conversational, be more open and stuff like that. I think there's room for both. It just takes it takes that. There's a lot of work to make it not so performative as like it's what's confessional, that
be
sort
more
of stuff.
personal and confessional.
Yeah.
So I guess if Rodney Dangerfield was starting now, his jokes would be like, my wife has many boundaries. She needed a safe space to communicate, and yet I was an immature
This is from my
man
perspective, and
holding on to
my privilege
toxic
was
masculinity.
that I felt like I was owed sex, but really I was just begging for it, and that's just what it was. And yeah, like
It would take a long time to set up all of these premises to
get to the
to justify the
my
attitude.
so poor growing up. The flies pitched in to fix the screen door for us, but
We were economically impoverished,
yeah,
but
exactly.
it was our circumstances.
That made the flies help us out, and we came together as a community. And
That was a great. My wife is such a bad cook. The flies chipped in to fix the screen door. Oh man!
I know are you kidding me? I know I'm ugly. On Halloween, the kid when they knocked on the door, they gave me candy. But I wrote a few like modern Rodney jokes and stuff
Yeah.
like that I would like just as writing exercise, just like how do you get it's like I looked up my family tree on ancestry.com. Looks turns out I came from spam, It's just like that sort of stuff, and just or my wife's so dumb I got her an Apple Watch, she dipped it in caramel, like that's like just boom boom boom. Or finally went on online dating, when I finally met the girl, when I met her, she looked disappointed. I said, "What's the problem? Don't I look like my picture?" She said, "That's the problem." And that's I don't get no retweets.
I don't get no retweets.
No retweets
I don't get
at
no
all.
retweets.
No retweets.
That's funny.
No faves neither. I wrote a suicide tweet. My parents blocked me. But like, and then like I looked into that. Like, there's there's a lot of people who do that sort of stuff. I see like the no retweets thing. I saw there's like a couple other Rodney like honorary Rodney accounts or whatever that do Rodney impressions, that do that sort of like modern Rodney sort of stuff.
Okay.
And so like
Yeah, like
it's out there,
Someone had
and
just released an AI generated George
Carlin
Carlin
yeah,
special.
exactly.
So I guess
There's like
someone doing a Dangerfield one.
I'm sure
is coming anytime
there's
soon.
there's so much of that, and like, and then just like the people who do one-liners, like Todd Glass does the character Rodney Hedberg, where he does Mitch Hedberg jokes as Rodney Dangerfield. Where he's like, I saw a wino eating grapes. I said, "Man, you gotta wait, huh?" Like that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Or dog's always in the push-up position. I don't have a girlfriend, but I know a girl who'd get really mad if she heard me say that.
Yeah.
And like that sort of stuff, where it's like all these one-liners can work if you do it in like Rodney voice, and it's just like it's a really cool sort of fun game and stuff like that, just to keep him alive.
Always fun. And Hedberg was a master of one-liners
Yeah.
as well. So you were going to the University of Kansas.
Yeah.
In Lawrence, Kansas.
Yes.
When you wrote this thesis.
Yeah.
On
Rodney. Rodney
the
and Larry,
opposite
yeah.
pillars of
Jewish comedy.
Jewish comedy.
Yeah.
So
Rodney's original name was
is there-
Jacob Cohen. Was Rodney Dangerfield's original name.
And then his first stage name was
Jack Roy. Yeah, because his dad was a Catskills guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And his dad's stage name was, I forget his first name, but his last name was Roy, which is why Rodney went by Jack Roy. And then when he came back 20 years later after the aluminum siding, changed his name to Rodney Dangerfield, which in the book, he says the host brought him up as just Rodney Dangerfield. He's like, "Hey, give me a different name." And the host just goes, "Rodney Dangerfield." Like out of the blue. That's what it says in the book.
Okay.
And then his first line on stage was like, because the audience like recognized him, like this was an old club that he used to perform at. They're like, and he goes, "If you're gonna change your name, change it." But his middle name was Rodney. So I like that's where, and I don't know exactly.
Dangerfield.
I don't know exactly where Dangerfield came from, but
Okay.
there's some like in the book, Rodney just says the manager just made it up on the spot, but there's also some rumors that like he got it from another comic from back in the day. I forget who. Maybe Buddy Hackett or Henny Youngman or somebody back then had like the Dangerfield name or something like that. I forget exactly who, but there's some discrepancy, there's some debate about where he got the name. But I know Jacob Rodney Cohen was his real real name. Yeah.
Okay. Now, how did your thesis? What was the reaction to it? And is there a big appreciation for Jewish comedy in the state of Kansas? This is what we've been waiting
This
for.
is what we. Oh my God! I'll tell you. Well, I got an A on the paper.
Nice.
So it was very much appreciated by my professor, who is I very much enjoyed that class. But the as far as Jewish humor, like Lawrence was a great place for it had a good Jewish community. It had a good sense of humor about itself and stuff like that. And it was good as far as appreciation for Jewish humor. I think most people have a good appreciation for Jewish humor. You know, Seinfeld.
I think so too. I think my
biggest...
favorite comedians have always been Jewish or black. So I
Yeah.
think there's something about
Very similar.
great suffering
Yeah.
that brings out
Exactly.
the greatest comedy.
Exactly. You know, that's it's fun to kind
As
of
much as I suffered, I should be a lot funnier than I am.
right. But that was the part of me was like I wanted to. It was either so I went the Rodney Larry route, but another route you could have gone with the Jewish humor is like Mel Brooks versus like Woody Allen, where it's like which is, you know, I was always more of a Mel Brooks guy, you know, and you know the kind of neuroticism of a Woody was I never really related to. Just
Okay.
like I never really was like I'm not.
Yeah, but his the that early stand up record or
Really
two
funny
records,
stuff. Yeah, yeah, really.
so conceptually funny.
Yeah.
Looking into the soul of the student next to him. I always loved Albert Brooks.
Albert Brooks was brilliant.
Yesterday, I listened to the interview he did on Mark Maron's podcast.
I haven't heard that one.
And I always loved Mel Brooks, and during the pandemic, I pulled up. I hadn't watched it in a long time. History of the World Part 2?
Oh wait, Part 2 or Part because Part 2 was the new thing that came out on Hulu.
Okay,
Part 1
Part
was
1.
the original movie.
Whew,
That
does not hold up.
goes
And there's so many,
hard.
so many like brutally anti-gay jokes in it.
Yeah.
And it's like what was
There's some shit in there that
I don't know if I had ever seen it when I was younger. When I watched it, and I was like, oh.
what I remember from because I haven't seen it in a long time, but what I remember from History of the World Part 1 is the Inquisition scene. The Inquisition, what do you say, Inquisition? And then I remember Hitler on Ice and Jews in Space. That's the coming soon to History of the World Part 2, Hitler on Ice, Jews in Space, which ended up being Spaceballs. But that was, you know, like Young Frankenstein and Spaceballs were two of my favorite movies growing up. And I saw Mel Brooks. I got to meet Mel Brooks, which
Where did you meet him?
I met him in Minnesota. He gave he did his one-man show at the temple that I grew up at, and it was Joys of Jewish Humor.
The Joys of Jewish Humor. Have you ever seen this book?
I haven't.
Please tell me the story.
Yeah, so he came to the temple that I grew up at, and he did his like one-man show, his HBO show, and he did a meet and greet afterwards, which was awesome. And I just got to shake his hand, take his picture, take a picture with him, myself, and my mom, which was just so great. Like he was such a huge influence on just the movies that I watched, and just he was just such a naturally funny person. Everything he said was just funny. It's similar to like how I view Rodney, which is like everything he says is just funny. And like watching his old interviews and like. You ever watch?
Oh, here it is, right behind me. There, look. I have the Joys. I'm sorry. I'm looking for it, and
the Joys
it
of
literally.
Yiddish,
I have the Joys of Jewish Humor, and the Joys of Yiddish. You ever seen this book?
I have not seen that book. That's amazing.
It's supposed to be a pretty famous book, and apparently there's the Joys of Yiddish Part 2.
I have Born to Kvetch, which is the history of the Yiddish language, which is essentially German to spite the Germans. Is
Right.
Yiddish, yeah. That's It's so funny because Yiddish is Yiddish for Jewish, so that's really the joys of
So
Jewish.
the German the Jewish people from Germany, it's kind of was their slang.
Essentially, I mean, like Yiddish is kind of like the way I conceptualize Yiddish is it's like Yiddish is to German what Australian English is to the Queen's English. Sort of like that's, or American English is to the Queen's English, where it's like we're kind of speaking the same language, but
Yeah, but there's such distinctive words in Yiddish that are so universally succinct and,
Yeah.
and perfect, like putz
Yeah.
and
it's schmuck.
schmuck. That's
Which-
the word I'm thinking
yeah,
of.
schmuck.
Schmuck is the most perfectly descriptive word ever.
You know what?
I mean, that's better than a jerk or an idiot.
Well, you know what a schmuck is?
Tell me.
Schmuck is the discarded foreskin of a circumcised penis.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Nope, that's what it means.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
It's the discarded skin of a circumcised penis.
Yep.
You schmuck.
You schmuck. So
Wow.
when you call somebody a schmuck, that's what you're calling them.
Wow. What an insult. I didn't know that. It's one of my favorite words ever.
It's a great word.
Schmuck.
You got the and then the k, schmuck.
Yeah.
It's such a satisfying word.
Yeah.
But that's what it means. It's the discarded foreskin of a circumcised penis.
Wow.
And Yiddish also coined the phrase.
I wish my parents would have saved me.
Oh man, can you imagine the people who save schmucks? That's
Yeah, just on like little like those old like the
Like, it's like-
microscope slide,
Yeah.
the glass slides from like
like-
high school, like just two of those pressed
like
together.
somebody saving their baby teeth. Like, just what are you doing here? But Yiddish
Make
also
wallets out of it.
coined the phrase.
Rub it and it becomes a suitcase.
Oh yeah, got nice leather. Those alligator skin shoes? No, you'll never believe me when I tell you. You'll never believe it. But the phrase "Don't piss on my back and tell me it's raining" comes from Yiddish. Like
Okay.
that's a Yiddish phrase. And then the funniest thing to me is when like a Yiddish term comes into the English vernacular in like a sincere way. Like, have you ever heard the term maven?
I'm familiar with the word.
Word maven.
yeah.
Like when I heard it growing up, like people says like, "Oh, he's a maven." Like that's like a genius or an Einstein or something like that. And that's like sincere when you say like people saying it in English, but the term maven in Yiddish is like calling somebody Einstein. Like, look at this Einstein. You know, like. Oh yeah, you're the smartest. What a maven. What a brilliant guy. You know, it's just like this drenched in sarcasm, drenched in like, yeah, you're
Okay.
an expert. You're the expert. You're a maven at this thing. You know, it's
Okay,
like,
so it's an insult.
yeah, it's an insult. Most things in Yiddish are an insult.
Okay, let's randomly. I've actually found this in a used bookstore in Vancouver, Canada.
Ooh.
And there's a bookmark in it, right to the N word for Jewish people.
Lovely.
And then the bookmark is Das Ideal. Oh, look, it's in German.
Oh, wunderbar.
Yeah. So
Well, that's something when I went to, like, I took German in high school, and so, like, I was able to better communicate with my Yiddish-speaking grandparents, whereas, like, I started being able to understand their, you know, they spoke English perfectly, so they didn't all, but once I started learning German, I started kind of, like, trying to learn Yiddish, too. They'd just kind of, like, laugh at me trying to do Yiddish and German at the same time. It's like, all right.
yeah, let's randomly open
Let's
the
look at
Hanukkah, Challah.
this. Is
You
all
need something better than that. Shalom.
Shalom.
That's not.
That's
not
a
Yiddish, is
Hebrew.
it?
That's
that's Hebrew, right?
That's just Hebrew. Yep.
What's a
The shofar. That's the ram's horn. That's what you blow on.
okay.
Rosh Hashanah. This looks.
What's
this,
a hoo-ha?
Hoo-ha. It rhymes with poobah. That's
like
such
a
an
penis?
odd thing. A hoo-ha is, I guess, is what it says here is. it says here this is what Al Pacino yelled in hoo-ha. No. Did he marry envy? Did he marry a pretty girl? Hoo-ha. Skepticism. I can't lose? Hoo-ha. Deflation. He calls himself a singer. Hoo-ha. Scorn. Some friend. Hoo-ha. It can mean
Imagine
all of
that.
that stuff.
Okay.
So I've not heard that one, but this hold up, Nick. Anything with a Nick at the end is pretty Yiddish. Hold up, Nick. Child Nick. Put Nick. It's like all that stuff is very Yiddish. The NIC. Hokachetnik.
Okay, I'm going to randomly open up the joys of Jewish humor.
All right. Choser.
Mrs. Rubin had just read a newspaper article that the remains of Sir Winston Churchill would be interred in Westminster Abbey. She turned to her husband, her face puzzled. "Tell me, Max," she asked. "This Weinstein Churchill was a Jewish boy. He should be buried in Westchester Abbey." Okay. It's like a lot of old joke books.
Yeah,
you read it and you're like, okay.
I'm not entirely sure.
The Jewish community, like any other group, has its share of agnostics and punsters who are indifferent to the tragedy of death and who do not mind saying so on their tombstones. Here are two examples. "I told you I was sick." But somebody famous has that on there.
I'm sure.
I think it was a comedian.
Probably, yeah.
"And you wouldn't believe me when I said my feet were killing me."
Yeah, those are good. Those are nice.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think I've ever opened this book before.
And we probably don't even need to open it again, and that's fine. But it's Jewish humor's come a long way.
Thanks to
The
masters
of Rodney, Mel, and everybody else.
I heard Mark Maron and someone else talking about this recently. That of course, Jewish people are hilarious. So of course they were like really funny. Had to have been funny people.
Yeah,
in Auschwitz and in the camps.
Well,
and
there's
stuff.
a story that I recently heard about that exact thing where this group of women in the Holocaust, they all had their heads shaved, and then everybody's crying, but there's this one woman in there that just starts laughing, and she was like, "What's so funny?" And she just goes, "It's the first time I've ever had a free haircut."
Wow.
And then she just looks at it, it's like, "Oh my God, same style."
Wow.
Just like, oh, so like, of course there's funny people. Of course,
Yeah.
it's you have to. I mean, it's a Beautiful Life, the movie where the guy just pretends like it's this big camp and big.
Oh yeah. Roberto Benigni.
Yeah.
And so what's your situation now? Are you doing the road a lot?
Doing the road a lot, especially this month I've been in LA, which has been nice, but previous month I've been doing the road a lot, and next month I'm going to be on the road again, which has just been great. I've been doing my own thing, which has been fun. Then I've also been going on the road with some bigger comics. Like I've been on the road.
What do you mean your own thing? You're
like just my own headlining stuff and
okay.
doing my own shows, which has been really nice. But I also go on the road with like Ben Bailey, who's hilarious, Marilyn Rice Cub, the Sklar Brothers, all those guys, and it's just been a lot of fun. It's I love stand up. I love it in all forms, and just I love watching it, I love doing it, and it's the best.
Me too, and I love the diversity of voices now.
Yeah, there's so many.
Every kind of human being doing comedy now. From when I started, it was pretty Caucasian male dominated thing, and now there's every kind of voice,
which is great, which makes things better, because it's like every aspect you can, like, because you want to have like the whole spectrum of emotion and the whole spectrum of personalities, the whole spectrum of human experiences, because that's what makes it funny. That's what, like, to be able to relate to somebody who you have no shared on paper no shared experiences with, but then to be able to see like, holy shit, I dealt with that. Oh my god, I can relate to that. Like that's the that's the best thing about writing a joke that can like be so specific to you, but everybody can relate to it. Is just that, and so like with the diverse voices and everything like that, it's just so cool to see all of that.
I agree. So, what should the people of the earth know about you, Jeffrey?
What should the people of the earth know about me? My name is Jeffrey Baldinger. I am 6'2" tall. I have red hair,
Great curly hair.
very lovely curls. They're on point today. I made sure to do it because you complimented my curls the other day, and I was like, I got to make sure they're curly for you.
You did a hell of a job.
I appreciate that, as do you, sir. I do stand-up comedy in Los Angeles as well as around the country and around the world. And if you would like to see me do stand-up comedy, you can follow me on Instagram at Jeff Baldinger, or subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is just type in Jeffrey Baldinger, and you'll find me. And then I post all my tour dates on my website, jeffreybaldinger.net.
That's great. That reminds me, I need to update my website. So, yeah, Jeffrey, you're a wonderful man, and I always love seeing you at the Comedy Store, and great talking comedy with you.
Always love it, and I love talking Rodney. I love talking comedy. I love doing all this stuff, and you're so hilarious, and you've always been so supportive of me and like everybody coming up. It's very indicative of like it makes sense that you're such a Rodney fan, because it's like you're doing the same thing. It's like you're so supportive. You're always like giving great advice and great, and you're such a natural on stage. It's so cool to see you perform when you do, and it's just like I love it. I love watching you perform.
Oh, thank you, brother.
Yeah.
It makes me feel really good. So, is there any advice or words of wisdom that you would like to give to the people of the earth? And thank you for that compliment.
Well, of course, it
means a lot to me.
It's my absolute pleasure.
It's nice to know that I've made some kind of impact.
Oh, you have, and it's very sincere. I'm not just buttering your bread. It's very sincere. I mean it. And as far as advice to the people of the world, find the joy. Find the laughter, find the fun, find the silly. And if you're a comedian, something that I've always kind of gone by in terms of joke writing is a joke doesn't have to be true, but it has to be honest. So find what's honest to you and deliver that. And I guess that would be my advice.
Okay, I love it. That's damn good advice. I mean, that still applies to everything that would be helpful to me. So.
All right.
Jeffrey,
Tom,
long may you run, my brother.
Long may you run.
Long may you run.
Hell yeah.
Hooray for humanity.